The 3 to 5 grams of creatine most people take every day is not the dose researchers are testing for an all-nighter. In a 2024 study, healthy adults took 0.35 grams per kilogram of body weight, roughly 20 to 25 grams for many people, in one dose. Then they stayed awake for 21 hours. Compared with placebo, memory was about 10% better, while some measures of processing speed improved by as much as 29%. That does not mean creatine made them 29% smarter. It means that on one specific language task, people finished about 29% faster with creatine than with placebo. Still interesting, just considerably less limitless. Creatine helps cells manage energy, and sleep deprivation puts the brain under unusually high energy stress. In this study, the large dose changed several markers of brain energy. At the same time, mental performance improved. Think overnight shifts, exams, long flights, or the particularly cruel form of sleep deprivation known as having a newborn. Then in 2026, the same research group tried a smaller dose. It still helped, but less. So the real questions are why this works so quickly, how much is actually needed, and whether anyone should start doing this on purpose. First, the normal 3 to 5 gram dose is still the normal 3 to 5 gram dose. Nothing here means everyone has suddenly been taking creatine wrong. Creatine is one of the most studied sports supplements in the world, and decades of research support roughly 3 to 5 grams per day as a safe and effective dose for healthy adults looking to improve strength and build muscle. These sleep deprivation studies are testing something completely different, one much larger dose taken once for a very specific situation. So what actually happened in the 2024 experiment? 15 healthy adults each went through 2 separate all-nighters in a lab. On one night they got creatine, on the other placebo. Neither they nor the researchers knew which was which at the time. Because the same people did both, each participant basically served as their own comparison. The dose was 0.35 grams per kilogram. For someone weighing 154 pounds, that is about 24.5 grams at once. So, not exactly the polite little teaspoon most people throw into a shaker. Researchers tested memory, reaction time, language, logic, and math, and they also used a brain scan called magnetic resonance spectroscopy to measure chemicals involved in brain energy. And the creatine condition held up surprisingly well. Memory was about 10% better than placebo. People also completed several mental tasks faster, with improvements ranging from roughly 16 to 29% depending on the test, and they reported slightly less fatigue. Again, nobody became 29% smarter. The point is that across several different tests, the sleep-deprived participants performed noticeably better after creatine. But the brain scans are what made the result much stranger. Your cells use a molecule called ATP for energy. Once ATP gets used, it needs to be rebuilt. Creatine helps with that through phosphocreatine, which acts like a rapid energy buffer. Muscle uses this system. The brain does too. The scans showed changes in several parts of that energy system after creatine, and some of those changes lined up with better cognitive performance. So this was not simply creatine goes in, test score goes up, everyone shrugs. Something measurable was changing inside the brain too, and that creates a problem. Brain creatine normally does not change this quickly. The brain has a protective filter called the blood-brain barrier, which controls what moves from the blood into brain tissue. Creatine can cross it, but brain creatine usually seems to increase fairly slowly. The researchers thought the unusual combination of a huge amount of creatine in the blood plus a sleep-deprived brain demanding more energy might speed up that process. The results fit that explanation, but here is where it starts to wobble a little. The study never tested the same giant dose in people who then got a normal night's sleep. So we cannot tell whether the fast effect came from the huge dose, the sleep deprivation, or both together. The researchers think the combination matters. The experiment did not prove it, which leads to the more practical question. Do you really need 20 to 25 grams? Fortunately, the researchers seem to have wondered the same thing. In 2026, the same group ran another study with 29 healthy adults and lowered the dose from 0.35 to 0.2 grams per kilogram. For that same 154-pound person, that drops the dose from about 24.5 grams to 14. Then they ran another 21-hour sleep deprivation protocol, and the effect was still there. Creatine helped on several tests involving logic, math, language, and reaction time, but the improvements were smaller, up to around 12%. That is a useful follow-up. Lower dose, still in effect, but it does not prove that 25 grams works better than 14. It certainly looks tempting. Bigger dose, bigger result, smaller dose, smaller result. Except these were two separate studies with different groups of people. To actually prove a dose-response relationship, you would want one experiment directly comparing several doses under the same condition. We do not have that yet. And this was mostly the same research team, so it is a follow-up, not an independent replication from another lab. The second study also did not repeat the brain scan. So right now, we have two small studies from the same research program showing that a large single dose can reduce some of the mental slowdown from severe sleep deprivation, with one of those studies also showing changes in brain energy. Promising? Absolutely. Case closed? Not particularly. And this is where creatine's broader brain research gets considerably less exciting. When researchers look at regular creatine supplementation in healthy, rested people, the results are mixed. Some studies find memory benefits, others find little or nothing. Older adults seem more likely to benefit than younger adults, but even that evidence is not completely settled. And one positive 2024 meta-analysis has since been criticized for the way it combined multiple results from the same participants, which may have made the evidence look stronger than it really was. So there is no good evidence that a healthy, well-rested 22-year-old can take creatine and become a human calculator. And weirdly, that may be exactly why the sleep deprivation research matters. Creatine may be most useful to the brain when that brain is under unusually high energy stress. That could explain why effects are harder to find in young, rested people, but become clearer when researchers remove sleep from the equation and everything goes mildly to heck. But that is still a hypothesis. An interesting one, not a finished answer. So should someone facing an overnight shift, an exam, or one of those delightful newborn nights start taking 20 grams of creatine? The research is not strong enough to make that a standard recommendation yet. Two small studies are enough to take the idea seriously. They are not enough to tell us the ideal dose, the ideal timing, whether everybody responds the same way, or what happens if someone does this repeatedly. And while nobody in the original 15-person study reported stomach problems or other obvious side effects, 15 people is not exactly a majestic mountain of safety data. There is also a difference between this and a normal creatine loading phase. Someone loading creatine for muscle might take around 20 grams across an entire day, usually split into several smaller servings. That is not the same thing as taking 20 to 25 grams all at once. So what do these studies actually tell us? The standard 3 to 5 gram daily dose is still what it was before, a well-studied way to get the established muscle and strength benefits of creatine. The newer research is about something much more specific. A single large dose appears capable of affecting a severely sleep-deprived brain within hours, and in two studies, people performed better on several mental tasks than they did with placebo. The larger dose produced the larger effect. The smaller dose still helped, but we do not know the ideal dose yet, and neither one is ready to become a standard recommendation. Creatine also does not replace sleep. There is no supplement that turns 4 hours of sleep into 8, despite an entire industry doing its absolute darndest to imply otherwise. What this research suggests is narrower and more interesting. Creatine may become more useful to the brain when that brain is under unusually high energy stress. That is very different from saying creatine simply makes you smarter. But it is also the version the evidence can actually defend. Creatine has spent decades being known as the muscle supplement with a side note about the brain. But now that side note might finally deserve its own paragraph. And if you want to know what one bad night of sleep does to the rest of your body, that video is right here.